on Nick's page. Yeah, but there you go. We're live. Hey.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. This is Nick Mondello, and I have the pleasure here of doing a live Facebook interview with Ron Aprea and Angela DeNiro. Welcome to both of you.
Hi.
Hi, Nick.
And welcome to our audience and listeners on Facebook, and eventually this will be recorded and posted on YouTube as well. Ron and Angela recently released a terrific new album entitled Swingin with Legends 2. And there it is, sideways, upside down, whatever. Okay. And it's a terrific album, big band, and with guest artists Randy Brecker, Lew Tabackin, and Ken Peplowski. So thank you, Ron and Angela, for taking time to speak to me and us about Swingin with Legends 2. And let's roll. So tell me a little bit about how the album came about. I know you've done a prior album, Swingin with Legends 1. And tell us a little bit about the album and how it came about, Ron.
Okay, well, Swingin with Legends 1 was recorded in 1997. It was released in 1998. And it featured Angela with my big band and guests Lionel Hampton, Frank Foster, and Lew Tabackin. And I produced maybe a dozen or so albums after that. And Swingin with Legends 1 was that project was always my favorite. I was so proud of that production. The band just sounded so beautiful. Frank Foster played his butt off, and so did Lionel Hampton and Lew. And I always wanted to kind of do an answer to that, something similar. We did a few albums after that, but during the pandemic, we had plenty of time. I had plenty of time to do a lot of writing, and I did, and I wrote about 40 arrangements, and we recorded 14 of those 40. And but before the recording, we had a rehearsal in the city. The pandemic had kind of slowed up a little bit, and Local 802, after 2 years, opened their doors again, and we were the first band to rehearse at Local 802 in 2 years, and they put us on the front page of the Allegro. It was a major event.
Wow.
But more than that, I got to hear my music. Music was sitting here in my writing room, and it was such a thrill to bring all that music down and for, not just hear my music, but to hear live instruments again. I hadn't heard a saxophone or a trumpet or a drummer or a line in a few years.
How did you sell? Most of the tunes are from from the Great American Songbook. How did you settle on these particular 14 tunes? Because the selection is great. Yeah, and the sequence is great too. I'd like to talk to you about that too. How'd you settle on these tunes?
Well, it's a taste kind of a thing, we of course, Angela and I, we sit here and we have this pile of arrangements in front of us, and we go through them one at a time, and the ones that we kind of feel the strongest about. Although for the rehearsals, I brought a lot more than 14 tunes.
We just did everything. Yeah.
We rehearsed a bunch of them, and out of the bunch that we rehearsed, I thought these were the ones that would best work for this project.
We went home and listened to them. We recorded the rehearsal and everything, and also it's just a feel thing too. Sometimes it's just stuff that goes together. You sit there and look and say, well, what would make a really wonderful program, and what do we feel best performing, I guess, right?
Yeah. So we kind of made that decision during these 2 rehearsals that we had. Actually, 3.
How did the rehearsal sequence proceed? Did you record like in sequence of the tunes, or what was the process there?
No, we kind of just randomly went through them.
At the rehearsal?
Yeah, at rehearsal.
Yeah,
So,
and when you recorded, yeah.
well, when we recorded, it's kind of again, it's a feel thing. You know, if we did a ballad, I think, okay, maybe let's do a bossa, let's change up the rhythm a little bit. Let's do something in another key, you know, and keep it interesting that way. And the same process is used when we're picking the tunes for the album and how we want to line them up. We kind of think about tempos and keys when we're putting the list together. And I think of it as sitting in front of a band and a singer performing, and I want the album to kind of sound like it's a performance.
He's also really sensitive to like the musician's chops and stuff like that, you know, especially on stuff where the trumpet section is blowing your brains out, you know, and you don't want them to just like overextend themselves or hurt themselves in any way. So he'll do a ballad or something, you know, after a really crazy tune, you know, something that's up tempo requires a lot of attention to, you know, to the scats and stuff like that, or the solis. I think you're pretty good about programming, even at rehearsals, to make sure that you kind of give everybody a rest, you know.
You know,
well, that's important. Yeah.
When you're doing a ballad, at the end of the ballad, it kind of builds up a thirst for something a little more energetic. So it's kind of a gut.
When you write for Angela, it's kind of an interesting thing. I was thinking about this earlier today. I don't know of any other arrangers, I might be wrong on this, that wrote for their spouse.
Lucky me. I love it. I'm spoiled.
Johnny Dankworth.
Yeah, Cleo Lane.
Oh yeah, with Cleo Lane. Okay, great. That's one. I didn't even think of that. That's out. Yeah, and they worked great together. But when you write for her, how do you write for Angela different than you would write for, you know, another female vocalist?
Well, I can take more chances with Angela.
Okay.
She'll forgive me if I push too hard.
Maybe no dinner, you know, but that's.
And since she's not paying me, right. I can take a lot of chances.
And when you say you can take some chances, what do you mean by that?
Well, I'll write things that I wouldn't write for a singer who I wasn't really 100% sure if they'd be able to handle it. I'll write some of these tough scats that I know Angela's really good at. She has this ability to sing like a horn player, and so I'll feature her with the brass section. I'll have her sing along with a whole brass ensemble, and I'll do the same thing with one or two of the members of the band. I'll have her scatting with just maybe the alto player, because I know she can do this. I would never do that with a singer who I didn't know had that capability.
Now,
do you have perfect pitch?
No, I don't have perfect. I think I have really good pitch and really good relative pitch, which I'm really happy with, Nick. I know some people that have perfect pitch and it drives them crazy. You know, if the band is not tuned properly, they physically cannot sing in tune with the band, right? So that's, you know.
Well, it's very interesting because you literally have to vocalize as an instrumentalist. You know, when you're doing that, when you're singing with the brass section, I forget which tune it is on the album, but I mean, it is right on. I mean, it's like a zero-sum game. When you do that, it literally has to be perfect in terms of articulation, time, you know, emphasis. Which track? I think there's 2 tracks that she scats with the ensemble. No,
actually, there's 4 tracks where she scats. 2 are with the band, and 2
right.
are just the alto player Todd Bayshaw.
Okay.
Todd came in. Todd never played with my band before, but he's one of the better players in town, and I knew of his playing. I heard him with Arturo's band. I loved his playing. But he never played with this band before until these rehearsals. I had 2 rehearsals before the session, and Todd made those rehearsals. And I was a little worried that, because I wrote those for me. Those are the same sketches that we do with the small group.
Right.
And I wanted to incorporate those into the big band arrangement, but I wasn't playing on the session. I was basically just conducting and running it. And I was wondering if Todd would would be able to, you know, play those things and match notes with Angela the way Angela and I do. But I was pleasantly surprised when
Oh yeah,
he
dead
played,
on.
played the crap out of him, and Angela and him were a perfect match. I was so pleased. Yeah.
It's tough, you know, when we do performances live. I'm looking at you, you know, and I know this. We're breathing together. I'm watching his fingers moving. We're actually taking breaths in the same place and everything. It's a very intense thing. But when you're in the studio, saxophones are in one room, you're in another room. You know, it has to be for the isolation aspect of it, and it's a little bit different. And yet it works. So we were really, really pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, I had my fingers crossed.
Yeah.
And I was sitting there like, whoa, this is working.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, all of those tracks where you do that, you know, are just dead on. You know,
Good.
I mean, I've heard Diane Shore do that with Maynard's band. You know, she did an album with him, and she does some of that with the ensemble, and they wrote it, you know, for that way too. You know, Ron, tell me a little bit about how you went about bringing the personnel that you use both for the ensemble and the heavyweight guest artists that you brought into the album.
Okay, well, we had been working together. This band was playing at Trumpets Jazz Club in Jersey, Montclair, New Jersey. We had been working at Trumpets for, I guess, about 6 years with the big band. We were doing the last Sunday of each month.
So much fun.
So the band was kind of working, you know, and the nucleus of that band is on this album, and of course there were good players were busy, so there were subs and there were different people. As I said, Todd Bateshaw, I never heard him play before with my band. I heard him play, but not with my band. And Wayne Goodman, lead trombone player, never played with the band. And my lead trumpet player, Brian Davis, played a couple of gigs with the band at Birdland. He was kind of new with the band.
Right.
He was playing the lead trumpet in those crazy solos, those
Crazy,
Maynard
right.
Ferguson solos that he played. He just blew the roof off the studio.
I met Brian the first couple of days he came to the U.S.
Really?
Great trumpet player and great teacher too, by the way. So how did you come across Todd and the trombone player? If
Well,
you didn't know that.
The first time I heard Todd play was at Birdland. He was with Arturo.
Which Arturo O'Farrell or Arturo Sandoval?
Arturo
O'Farrell.
O'Farrell. He was with Arturo's Latin band.
Right.
We were actually with a trombone player, Sam Burtis. Sam Burtis was sitting at the table with us, and Sam says, "Ron," he says, "check out this alto player." Todd Bateshaw. So that's the first time I heard Todd play. And this was the first opportunity I had to call him for my band, because I was playing lead alto with my band all those years at Trumpets.
Yeah.
And recently at Birdland, I played a few of the lead alto gigs, and then I had what's his name? He's playing the lead with the Basie band now. Dave's no, not
What am I saying? Leave it up to jeez.
Anyway,
move on. We'll come back to it.
but Dave couldn't do it. He was on tour with the Basie band. So I called Todd. I said, let me call Todd. This is the first time I had an opportunity to call Todd, and he was open. He said, "Yeah, man, I'd love to do it." And I was pleasantly surprised. He came down and read the heck out of the book. What a great reader he is.
Nice person too. Really nice
and
person.
those jazz solos and those scat things he did with Angela. I was a little bit worried. I would have been worried no matter who the alto player was doing those scats.
Yeah.
But he did. He played those scats with Angela about as well as I could have ever expected.
Absolutely.
Too really beautiful.
Let me ask you this: the actual selections of the tunes. I mean, how did you narrow down from 30 or 40 tunes that you had to this group of 14?
You know, it's a feel thing. We rehearsed a lot more than 14.
All right.
So we got to hear probably 20 or more at the rehearsals, and I just felt that these 14 sounded the best, and sounded like they would go together and make a really nice album. It was just, you know, you just go with your gut, and that's and we talked about it, and Angela and I, you know, we sat here and we had an arrangement that I actually co-arranged with Frank Foster on All the Things You Are.
Oh, yeah.
It was a big decision to not record that because I love the arrangement, and it would have worked really well. But you know, looking at the program, I just felt this was the best program.
That should be your hardest decision. You know, it's like we probably brought about 20 tunes into the studio with us that day, recorded 14 of them in about 6 hours, which I do believe, according to our engineer, was probably unprecedented with a big band. But, you know, yeah, we had so much wonderful music that it's like, which kid do you like the best? You know,
Sure.
Our favorite things. And then that was it. We said, wow, we've done really a wonderful day's work, and we're really happy. We ended with, you know, the Bobby Darin from Curtain Falls, and it's good.
Did you tell me that you all have a video of the session?
We have we have pieces of different.
We do,
different
yeah.
kinds
We
of
had
songs,
people
yeah.
there that were doing some videoing, and the sound quality is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
In some cases, they were videoing from the control room, so.
Yeah.
So you'll hear on these videotapes, you'll hear exactly the way it sounded in the control room, which is almost like a finished recording.
That was fun. It was interesting to hear
Oh,
it.
by the way, the alto player is David Glasser.
Yeah, wait.
I had a brain lock here.
Brain freeze.
How would you describe the vibe in the studio of that day? I mean, doing all of those tracks basically in a 6-hour session.
The only way I can describe it from my perspective, where I was sitting, I
Right.
couldn't feel my ears.
Yeah.
I mean, I was mesmerized. The way Angela and the band were bouncing off each other, you know,
Right.
and the energy level. I think, again, going back to the pandemic, this was almost like for everybody. This was like, you know, let's get back to normalcy here.
Catharsis.
you
The
know,
entire day was like that, right? Yeah.
and it was almost like people being let out of prison or something, just celebrating. It was like a celebration.
Mm.
You know, that's the feeling
beautiful.
I got sitting there.
Yeah.
And I got to say, most of the album was done in one take or two, and very few were two takes. They were just like we would just like call it off, boom, hit it, boom, okay, next, and that's the way it went.
You know, it's kind of funny when we were at the rehearsal. Brian asked. I remember we were talking about the recording session. We had a rehearsal the day before, and our trumpeter, I adored Brian Davis, says, "Will Angela be singing with us that day?" And I started. Well, why not? Why wouldn't I be singing tomorrow? Did you want me to sing? I never even get. You know, it's
Because you know,
I guess.
with the studio setups today, there's overdubbing, and this was not an overdub.
But I
Right.
started,
So you guys recorded it live in studio,
You bet.
exactly.
and how did you set it up? You know, in terms of the positioning of the ensemble and where Angela was relative to the band.
Well, I had little to say about the setup. In fact, when I got to the studio, it was already set up.
God bless our engineer.
Our
Yeah.
engineer, Costin, he did an amazing job of setting all the ones. And of course, Angela was in a separate booth. We had a separate booth for the bass. We had a separate booth for the piano and drums.
Right.
And every horn had its own mic.
That was
Okay.
every instrument is separately
And then he
mic'd.
had an overhead for the overall sound. This guy did an amazing recording.
What was his name? What was the engineer's name?
It's Mozart's studio in Little Falls, New Jersey, and his name is I call him Costa. His name is What is it?
Kostadin
Kostadin
Tomchev.
Wow.
Tomchev. Yeah, great engineer. This guy's a genius. He
Yeah.
really
Okay.
has his stuff down. Yeah, it was a pleasure.
Unbelievable.
Really great day.
Say that again. I'm sorry.
No, I said it was a really great day. I'm usually a pretty controlled person when it comes to singing and everything. You know, I'm not one of these overly emotive people. And the thing about it was I was in a booth and I didn't know anyone could see me that day, but our friends were in the engineers in the control room, and they were taking pictures of me while I was in the booth, and the band couldn't see me. And I think I was like almost dancing, conducting and everything. The music was so incredible. It was probably one of my favorite days ever, and certainly one of my favorite days singing. It was just an experience. Everyone should have that. Yeah.
In terms of your own stylings, who were some of your vocal? Well, I'll ask the both of you. In Ron's case, it's going to be more towards the arranging and orchestration example, but ladies first. Your influences, the stylings that you seem to embrace.
We talked about this one other time. You go through different periods. It's like I said to you before, trying to name your favorite child. I originally fell in love with Ella Fitzgerald because of her stylistic. I love the fact that she could scat. It was amazing to me.
Yes,
then I just loved her joyfulness when she sang. But then I fell in love with Nancy Wilson. She would break my heart when she sang with her ballads. Love Sarah Vaughan. And we spoke about Cleo Lane and Johnny Dankworth. One of my favorite live performances in my life was the time we went to Westbury and heard Cleo Lane and Johnny Dankworth with the Ellington.
They did a Duke Ellington tribute, yeah.
I felt sorry for anyone who wasn't there that night. They were stunning. Nick, they were stunning. So
I was impressed with Johnny Dankworth's writing, how he nailed the Duke Ellington sound. You know, it was quite a performance.
In what way? Meaning the orchestration or
the sound of his harmonies, the way he harmonized his brass and the saxophones and the voicings that he used. He really understood Duke's arranging style.
You know, that leads to an interesting question. In terms of your style, writing wise, arranging wise, I mean, I know you were close friends with Frank Foster, and Frank was a mentor of sorts and a friend, you know, from a playing and a arranging standpoint. Do you think that in today's day and age, and it's kind of a loaded question, that arrangers can gravitate to be too complex or, you know, too, what's the word I'm looking for? Too intellectual, as opposed to that classic Ellington Basie style of swing is paramount, precision is paramount, and we're not really trying to reinvent the arranging wheel, so to speak?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, and I hear a lot of that too. I hear a lot of music that just arrangements that just go on and on and on.
Right.
You'll hear a trumpet solo, and then you'll hear a tenor solo, and then you'll hear a piano solo, and then you'll hear a trombone solo, and they try to throw everything into one arrangement sometimes. I think the simplicity, and not that any of these arrangements that Duke wrote were simple, or that Frank Foster wrote were simple.
They were deceptively simple. They seemed simple.
They were compact. Yeah. They were compact. You know, they made their statement. Boom, boom, boom. They knew when to get out. You know, there's a real art to that. You know, without boring people with harmonies. You know.
I was listening to a Gerald Wilson track yesterday, as a matter of fact, and you know, you listen to his writing is I don't want to say simple, because that's not really accurate, nor is it fair, but the writing is a frame, almost like a small group scenario. It's a frame for the soloists, and the soloists can get into more extensive solos, a little more space, a little more, open sections or what have you, But it's really interesting in terms of, looking at, your writing, which comes out of like the Basie, Frank Foster, Quincy Jones styles, plus you have your own, stylings as well. You'll get a lot of arrangers that will have, a sax section that are dynamite doublers. So you'll have a lot of that, things like Thad Jones used to do with his band, and some of the other players. It's almost like what I asked Angela about stylings. Current arranging stylings, versus more classic, kinds of Sammy Nestico, for example. You hear a Sammy Nestico chart that he did either for Basie or, some of the things he did for the elite military bands or whatever. I mean, it's a Sammy Nestico chart. There's no two ways about it.
Yeah.
But the arranging on the album is just superb, and not to inflate your ego, but again, it's just very, very classic, which I think is a good thing nowadays. Which leads me to a question about your book. Okay, Ron's book, which I only have it in digital form. I read it, of course. It is titled "The Era I Almost Missed." And what was the era that you almost missed?
Oh, there were a lot.
A lot?
No, I'm just kidding. The big band era is what the book is referring to. The era I almost missed. I was had to do at the time I was born. I was when I was a kid.
Right.
The big band era was thriving. Kids were dancing to swing music, and there were many good dance bands, touring and playing, and of course the Miller Band and Dorsey bands and all those great bands, and of course Basie's band was going during that period. And my mom would take me to the Paramount Theater. In them days, they had a live show, and they had 2 movies, and between the movies, these bands would come out, and sometimes sax as well. It was crazy. It was like vaudeville, but then there was always a good big band. And I remember as a kid listening to Louis Prima's band and thinking, "Oh, because in them days he had the big band," and I would sit there and getting goosebumps. I said, "Wow, this is what I want to do." I was exposed to good music at a really young age, and that was the era. And by the time I got my chops together and was of age, the big band era was dwindling. It was fading. As a matter of fact, in 1969, I joined Lionel Hampton's band, and one of the gigs we played was at the Smithsonian Institute in D.C. They brought us down here as they did with all the big bands. They one weekend they'd have Duke's band there. Then Duke would do a concert, and they would take it and put it into their archives. And then Basie's band would come down, and Buddy Rich's band would come down. And they would do this because they realized that the era was coming to an end, and these guys were getting old, and they're not going to be around forever. Let's record them and capture this while we can. So fortunately for me, I was part of that series, and that's so I was watching I was experiencing and living the tail end of the era. And but during that period, I played with all those great bands that I wanted to play with. I got a chance to tour. My first real tour was with the Elgart band. I got to play lead alto with Les's band. And then of course Lionel Hampton's band, and I got to play with the Buddy Morrow and Billy May band, Woody Herman's band, and all these bands as a kid that I just loved and I wanted to play with. And
Did you say Billy May?
yeah, yeah.
Now that's really interesting. Tell me a little bit about that. Did you kind of glean as a writer, anything from Billy?
You know what? I was earlier in our conversation. I was going to mention, and then we kind of drifted off. But yeah, he's one of my favorite writers. I loved playing with that band. When I played with his band, it was a weekend band. There was a tail end of the business, and it wasn't a full-time gig. But I was doing weekends, and one night it would be Buddy Morrow's band, and then the next night we would do we would do a gig in Pennsylvania, and we would be the Buddy Morrow band with the Buddy Morrow stands and jackets. And then the next night, the same band, we would be playing Billy May charts, and Frankie Lester, a really good singer, he sounded like Sinatra, he would do the vocals. So I got to play all those great Sinatra Billy May charts, and I did this for a couple of years, and that had a big influence in how I write. I think I was really fortunate. I played the music of all these great arrangements because I played with all these bands. Elgart had great arrangements. Of course, Hamp had, Woody had, all these bands I played with. So I was playing good music all the time. How could that not, be part of your writing?
I want to just interject something, because we've heard this a couple of times in the past year when we tell them it's a big band album and everything, and they say, "Oh, we just love the sound of the big band era," and I always start laughing, and because it doesn't sound like Glenn Miller or anything like that. This is not old music. It's just, we're talking about an instrumentation.
Yes,
5 saxophones, 4 trombones, 4 trumpets, and a rhythm section.
Sure.
It's a big band. It doesn't mean that it sounds like something from the 40s, which really gets me bonkers sometimes.
Sure, absolutely. I'm going to put, Angela, I'm going to put you on the spot.
Don't.
Ron's book, of course, is titled The Era I Almost Missed.
Right.
Okay. What's the title of your book, and what's it about?
The Great Life I'm Having. That's what the title of my book.
All right. Okay.
I've had some amazing.
Is that a working title, or is that the real deal?
It's the real deal, and it's a work in progress. Life is very interesting, yeah. But we were talking about this the other day, and I love what you're talking about as far as arranging style, because when we go to listen to things, sometimes I'll say, you know what, it's like books and literature. Sometimes you want to read something that's beautifully crafted. The language is beautiful. Sure. But when you stop and you say, well, this is a wonderful writer, but I think I want to read something really, different. I want to read a writer that just says what he has to say, or she says what she has to say. I'm looking for a mystery, or I'm looking for something. I just want to read a book, Sure. And it has to be flowery. It just has to have, great storyline and be really interesting. And that's how I feel about music too. It's like sometimes you want to really think, and sometimes you just want to be entertained, and you want to sit there. Like if you sit in front of the basic band, or I think when I'm just listening to our band, when I'm not singing, I get to just sit down and listen to the the instrumentals. I feel like I'm going to come out of my chair from the sound that's coming at me. And
sure.
That's what I want to hear when I hear a big band. It's like whether they're playing a ballad or they're playing an up-tempo or something, I want to be transported by that sheet of sound. And that's what I love about your writing. And it's not simple, because it sounds simple, sure. But it's not. It's intricate. I see all the chords and all the work that goes into making something sound. Maybe it sounds basic, but it's just so beautiful, and it takes you to that right spot that you want to be at.
There's a couple of things about the selection of tunes on the album, including Two for the Road, which I always bring up because it's a favorite tune of mine. And from what I understand, it was one of Mancini's who wrote it. It's one of Mancini's favorite tunes, if you think about that. But the other one, of course, is the for Phil, which, Ron, is an original that you wrote for Phil Woods. Can you tell us a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, I got to say, what an honor it is for me to have one of my compositions on an album with all these great composers, Burt Bacharach and Cini, and you know, just Johnny Mercer, I guess, and Gershwin, and
Sure.
all these great composers, and
Yeah.
Aprea.
The Pantheon. Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, but that tune was written out of my love for Phil Woods. Phil.
Did you know him?
I knew him very well. I studied with him back in the '70s, and of course we stayed friends, and we were emailing back and forth like everybody else when the internet came. And I would always go down. Angela and I would go down to his gigs whenever he was in town, whenever it was possible. We would go down and say hello and be treated to a night of great music, because he always sounds great. So, but yeah, I got to know Phil real well when I studied with him, and I know his life story, and I was very, very saddened by the fact that he couldn't make a living in music in this country. He had to move to France he spent 10 years over there.
Right.
Because he was basically starving in his country. Couldn't pay his bills, couldn't work, which boggled my mind. He was such a fantastic player. So I wrote about all basically that tune for Phil is his life story. And when I finished writing that tune, I told him that I wrote a tune for him. He says, oh man, he says, send me a lead sheet. And I was a little nervous, you know. Geez, I hope he likes it. So I sent him the lead sheet. I mailed it to him.
Right.
In them days, who knew how to do it with emails? So I mailed him the lead sheet, and he got back to me and said, "Man," he said, "I really dig it." He says, "Keep writing." He liked it, and of course, we recorded it with my sextet, 3 horns, and I wrote that tune in around 2000. Anyway, I got his endorsement, and afterwards we did a little photo shoot, and we took some pictures together. And he was in New York, and we met him at one of his gigs, and we took some pictures and stuff. And then during the pandemic, I said, you know what? I love this tune, and Phil's gone. He's not with us anymore. But fortunately for me and for him, that he got to hear it while he was alive.
It was special, yeah.
And it's more of a biography. You know, it's about his life.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, Randy Brecker wrote something really interesting. He gave me a quote for the album. One of the things he said was, "Fulfill is already a classic."
Oh, that was nice.
Wow.
Randy Brecker, man, that was such a heavy compliment. And
Todd Basher played the alto solo.
So if Randy likes it and Phil likes it, I got a shot.
You get
Wow. Too much. Tell me a little bit about Tabackin and Ken Peplowski on the record as well.
You know, Lew and I go back to the Elgart band,
Right.
mid '60s, and we've been friends for a million years. And following that tour, he had just got into New York from Philly. He came up from Philly, and this was his first gig.
Oh, I didn't know he's a Philly guy, huh?
Yeah. Come up from Philly. He was new in town, and he got the call to play with Elgart. And boy, what a treat that was for me, because the tour was crazy. I mean, I'm not going to go into all the specifics now.
Sure.
It was bizarre. It was really,
you talk about that in your book.
yeah.
some of my favorite stories.
So the best part of that tour was listening to Lew play every night. Les would feature him with just the rhythm section. It was a big band, but he would let Lew just play with the rhythm section.
Mm-hmm.
And Lew, such a virtuoso tenor player.
By the way, let me interrupt you. The anecdote regarding Ron and his experience on the Elgart band is worth the price of admission for the book in and of itself. It is a classic.
Yeah,
Anyway,
No, well, we won't go into the whole thing, but
No. We're gonna leave that as a teaser.
Yeah.
You know.
Lou and I met, and we've been friends. And following that tour, he played with my big band. And what a great sax section I had. I had Frank Foster playing tenor. I had Lew Tabackin on tenor. I had Arnie Lawrence playing third alto, me playing lead, and Richie Bars playing baritone. What a great saxophone section that was. We had a steady gig. We were playing at a club called the Embers West in the city. Band was, you know, in them days, a lot of bands were playing stock arrangements. You know, you couldn't buy the arrangements that we're able to buy now. I mean, all arrangers now are publishing their music, but back then, the stock arrangements were terrible. So I had great Frank Foster arrangements, and we were playing at this club, and we were the hot band in town. And I'd look up and see Woody Herman in the audience. You know, or Ella was in.
You said Ella said it for one night.
Ella came down.
Sarah was there. Yeah.
Joe Williams came down with his wife, and he's sitting in front of the band doing this. You know.
Wow.
It's a pretty strong band. I had people like Britt Woodman from Duke's band.
Sure, from Duke's band, sure.
Mike Longo was on piano, and great players. Yeah, well, that was late, a little bit later, but it was
Marvin.
Marvin Stam was in the band, and all these young monsters, you know.
Wonderful.
It was quite a fun gig, and Lou was in that band with me. So Lou and I have been friends for a lot of years, and he was a natural to. And then he went on to become he was doing the Carson show
Right out in L.A. Sure.
He did all his recordings. I think he has 10 Grammy nominations. You know, he did so much recording, and then he probably has another 10 with Chico, and he has like over 20 Grammy now. So he's going to have a really great career.
I think Toshiko's got a few too. So
yeah, and so Lou was a natural to be part of this legend. He's definitely a living legend. If there ever was one.
He was on the first Swingin' with Legends album too. We had Lionel Hampton, Frank Foster, Lew Tabackin, and now.
Wow.
And now we tease him. We say, now you're really a legend. So he's on the Legends 2 album with Randy Brecker and Ken Peplowski.
One of the many tunes on the album, but the last tune I found really, really, really interesting and touching, by the way. Angela, tell me a little bit about The Curtain Falls. I think the only time I've ever heard that recorded before was with Bobby Darin.
Yeah, it is.
But that was a masterful selection on you guys' part. So how did that come about, and what were your thoughts about singing that tune?
How about if I set it up and I'll let you explain? I was musical conductor director for a male vocalist. I'm bad on years, but
in the late night.
Right around the time when the first Swingin' Legends album came out, I was contacted and hired by a singer who was doing a lot of nice work. He was opening for Jackie Mason, and he was like,
that must have been fun.
Kind of like a Sinatra type singer, but he loved Bobby Darin too.
Yeah.
And he asked me to take that arrangement off Bobby Darin's record. He wanted to close his show with it. So I wrote him an arrangement on that tune, and I always loved that song. And listening to, transcribing that thing from the record, I was getting goosebumps listening to Bobby Darin do it, and I always really had a affection for that song. So during the pandemic, I thought about it, and I pulled out that arrangement. I asked Angela, "Would you like to do this tune?" I said, "Such a pretty song. Close the show with it." And she said, "Of course."
We were close.
Did you know the song? Did you know the tune?
Well, I've been, there's nothing that he writes that I don't listen to. I hear every note he composes, and I fell in love with that song. And we bought the Bobby Darin album, and I mean, you know Bobby Darin. He's like emotion personified. He sings the song, and it's just like you just see his heart out on the table, and you know that he is connecting with the audience, and that's his last tune. And he really means it when he says, "We've shared a moment," you know, and I hope you're walking out and we're leaving as friends. And you feel the passion when he's singing. And we decided we'd love to start closing shows with that song because it's just so, I don't know.
Nobody's doing it.
Nobody's doing it.
That's the amazing thing. It's a great tune. And I wasn't aware of it until I heard it on the album.
Really?
And then of course then I went and did my homework on the Darren thing, you know.
Well, here's the funny, we were just thinking about closing our shows with it. You know,
right.
This was the original thing. And then it morphed into, well, we're going to do an album. And then Ronnie says, you know what, we're missing the boat here. We should be closing the album with this song. And it was perfect because I think that was the last song we recorded that day too. It just worked out that way. You know, we were done. We needed to finish up. And it was the perfect song.
Basically thanking your audience for listening to your show. You know, it's kind of
Who wrote that tune? Who wrote that tune?
Gosh,
good question.
No. I should know this. It's not. It's more. It's
somebody I've never heard of.
Yeah. But you keep talking, and I'll check it out. I should know.
I'm in the dark here, or else I won't be able to see it on the album.
We're all in the dark. Let's see. But I'll tell you that when. Okay, hold on 1 second. Oh gosh, embarrassing. Curtain Falls, Saul Weinstein. Okay.
Wow. I'll tell you something interesting about Darren. Just as an aside, Roger Kellaway, who I'm sure the both of you know, pianist, great pianist, by the way. Most people know him from the closing theme of Archie Bunker Show, you know, the okay, Roger wrote that. But anyway, Roger was Bobby's musical director.
Really?
Okay. And he said one time, someone had asked him about Bobby Darin, working with Bobby Darin. And Darren did a bunch of different things, and he morphed from a crooner, and then he went into the folk thing with, you know, some pop tunes and what have you. But Roger Kellaway said of all the artists that he has worked with, there were only two who, when they made suggestions to him musically, were always right on target no matter what, that he didn't have to argue with or debate with or whatever. There were only two.
Really?
One of them was Barbra Streisand, and you wouldn't want to argue with her anyway. Okay. Because but she knew her stuff, and she was pretty, pretty forthright. And the other was Bobby Darin, which, when you go back and you listen to his material and you study some of the things that he did, he was a lot more than, Mac the Knife and, some of the other, show type tunes that he did, plus he was a savant. He was like a chess master, like a chess grandmaster or something like that. But that tune really, you talk about the cherry on the sundae, on that album, it could not, I mean, you couldn't put that tune in the middle of the album. It just doesn't work.
No. And it's the band too, kind of, right? We've shared this moment, and as this moment ends, it's like the words are so poignant, and it gives you goosebumps. And I get goosebumps listening to it, not because of anything else except that it reminds you of what a beautiful day it was and how that was the perfect ending to a perfect day. It really was.
Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about plans for the album, where it's available. I mean, we're going to get into a little commercial here, so have at it. Where can they get the album? What are your plans for the album? Grammy, whatever. Fill us in.
Okay, well, let's start with Grammy. We're entered in the Grammys with the album. It's jazz vocal category. Also, there's there's two other categories that were entered in, and the other one is Randy Brecker for Best Improvised Solo, and our engineer, Costin, for Best Engineering.
Non-classical.
Wow.
Because it was such an amazing recording session.
So those are the three entries for the album. But I just want to say, this album was put together, as we had already talked about, during the pandemic. I was basically writing to keep my sanity. We were quarantined, and just putting all this music together was just a labor of love. Something that tunes that I just loved and I wanted to do. And we fell into, and we had rehearsal, and I was totally inspired by how the music sounded. And all I wanted to do was record this music. That was my objective. But when the album's done and we're mixing and we're listening to the playbacks, and then the Grammy season comes around, I said, "What the heck? Let's throw it in and see what happens." So we did, and we're entered into the Grammys now in those three categories that I just mentioned. And we have our fingers crossed, and the feedback's been good. I've been getting such positive feedback from other NARAS members, and all of a sudden I'm thinking we might have a shot at a nomination. I don't know about a Grammy.
It's always fun.
There's a lot of great vocalists in this category, and we love them all. And but let's throw it in the mix and see what happens.
It's always said that music or any art form has to be a competition, right? We talk about this
quantified, of course, absolutely, and it's a business. It's a business, so that those aspects enter into it.
But the next part is when you're doing this, part of being in NARAS is the Recording Academy. Is you have to listen to other music of others too, and we've had the joy of having some amazing music sent to us that we got to listen to, and I'm saying, did you ever hear this person before? This music, or it's stunning. It almost makes you sad because there are so many incredible musicians that we've never heard of, and it's humbling sometimes, but it's a joyful thing. You have to be happy about it.
Yeah, I mean, I encounter that every day. What's really interesting is that with the internet and streaming platforms and whatever, you could just pull a name up, an unfamiliar name, and take a listen to it, and you say, wow, I mean, there's a guy, a European fellow, and I'm probably going to mispronounce his name. It's Marius Preda, Preda. I think that's how you do it. And he plays an instrument called the cymbalon. Okay. Now it's nothing to do with the cymbals. All right. But it's like, it's a mallet instrument that has a sound somewhere between the vibes, a marimba, and, a kalimba. Okay. And, this cat gets on the cymbalon. I first heard him sitting in with Arturo Sandoval, and they're doing giant steps, okay? But he's doing his thing. Who would have known? And I think that's wonderful that so much terrific music, and there's other music that's out there that's average. I mean, whatever, okay, or contrived is another word for it. But wonderful, wonderful artists, literally all around the world.
Yep.
Let me ask you, Angela. We talked about stylings and what have you. I also know you do a lot of voiceover work.
Right.
More commercials, right? That you do. How did you get into that?
I don't know. We were doing radio, and a friend of ours had said, "Oh, you should do this. You should do voiceovers and stuff." And then I don't know. I wanted something to do that I could do at home, and it sounded interesting to me. And Ronnie,
Yeah, you could also do it during the pandemic while Ron is writing.
okay, well, yeah, you can do it anytime. I mean, what are you doing up at 2 a.m? Well, it's nice and quiet now. I just want to lay down this stuff. It's a nice thing. It's a nice little sideline. It's involved in that it doesn't just require a speaking voice or being able to read properly and everything, but it also is a lot of technical stuff.
I just wanted to add that during the pandemic,
right,
we were so fortunate because I was very busy writing for a couple of singers, and she was in her studio doing voiceovers. We were two very fortunate people.
I know.
With the music world shut down and the clubs
Sure.
and restaurants all shut down, we were very, very fortunate that she was doing voiceovers and I was writing, and we were able to pay our mortgage. Yeah, thank God for the voiceovers.
Very blessed. Yeah, it's really a lot of different things. A lot of people have always asked me, "Oh, I'd love to get into this and everything," and I say, "Sure." Now let me explain to you. And as soon as they start hearing all that you have to do and the technical aspects of it, they go, "I don't want to do that."
Right. It involves work, But it's interesting that you probably have a leg up, so to speak, because you're a vocalist, so you have a natural sense of inflection, expression. Certainly, you're not going to have the flexibility that you have as a jazz artist, as a jazz vocalist. When you would be doing, or do you have any flexibility at all in terms of interpretation, or are you pretty much, regimented by what guidelines you're given?
I guess that depends. That's a good question, but I think it just is an assignment by assignment type of thing. Some people want you to be creative. Some people want you to be, motive for a commercial or something, but for things that are, videos and stuff that are corporate or maybe medical things and stuff like that, it's pretty, you have to be able to bring understanding to the listener, and that's the most important thing.
It's funny you mentioned that. And I'm sure both of you remember the halcyon days in the New York jingle studios. With not only the musicians, but the fantastic jingle vocalists and jingle singers. Like Linda November, which was a biggie, and Ann Phillips, who they used to call the Jingle Queen. I'm sure you guys know some of these names. It's a funny thing. I happen to see a thing that Linda did. Her husband is Artie Schreck. I don't know if you know him, but they're still performing out in Vegas. But
yes, I do.
Yeah. You know Artie, right?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, so it's kind of a thing where you have a certain skill set, and within that skill set, you got some guidelines you have to work with, and boy, do you have to deliver. Say again.
I said a lot of pressure. I would imagine.
Without a doubt. Did you feel any pressure as you did the album, as you were doing the recording?
You know what? I had my own recording studio for 10 years, and when that red was on, I don't care where the studio is and how many recordings you did. There's always pressure in the recording studio. That's that to me is the thing to overcome as a jazz musician. Let's face it. I mean, the place to play jazz is in a nightclub, with an intimate room where people come hear jazz, and it's a certain feel, and as the night progresses, the band's warming up, and things are you're interacting, and that's all you're thinking about. All you're thinking about is what you're doing. But when you're in a recording studio, it's a little bit of a different head, and takes a little while to get used to it. But I don't care how used to it you get. It's always a little bit different than when you're out on the bandstand playing a gig.
Well, yeah, you don't want to mistakes. There's a lot of pressure to be accurate as opposed to being creative.
And usually I found over the years, I think most singers and musicians will agree. Certainly Frank Sinatra, if he were around, would agree that first take is the one.
Yeah.
Usually that's the best take. So get anybody wants any advice, get your stuff together before you get in the studio and try to make that first take.
There's a wonderful book on Frank in the studio called Sessions with Sinatra, and Chuck Granata, great writer, nice guy. It's all about the sessions. Nothing to do with Hollywood, nothing to do with gossip, nothing to do with the mafia. It is all about Frank in the studio. And he did a hell of a job on that book. And it's really almost, although it's not written this way, it's almost like a textbook on how to conduct oneself and how Frank would work, in the studio with the Nelson Riddles and the Billy Mays and the Gordon Jenkins, basically take by Quincy Jones, take by take by take, And yes, there's some anecdotes. Frank came in and wasn't feeling well and decided just to bag it, and sure, there's some of that in there too. But it's sort of like a fly on the wall in the studio, which I think is always fascinating. But anyway, sort of wrapping things up, where can the average public get the album, hear the album, and get the book?
Okay, it's on all.
Promo time. Go.
Here we go. Album.
There's the album. It's on all the platforms. It's on Spotify. It's on Amazon and
Apple Music,
and
SoundCloud. Yeah.
YouTube, and our website. The album can be purchased from either my website or Angela's. Mine is ronaprea.com, and yours is
Angela DeNiro, DENIRO, AngelaDeNiro.com, sure. And you can get his book on his website too, on ronaprea.com. You can get the first album, the Swingin' with Legends 1 and Swingin' with Legends 2. So
there you go. You get a package deal. Absolutely. Well, Ron and Angela, this has been absolutely wonderful. Speaking with you again. About Swingin' with Legends 2. For those of you that weren't aware, we did sessions with Ron and Angela 1. So this is session 2. The first one we decided didn't meet our high level standards.
Well, it was a little bit of a fail, actually, on Facebook's part.
The technology gremlins were impotent. But anyway, what's coming down the pike for you two? Come on, what do you got? Musically, what's coming down the pike?
Okay, well,
because you got a tough act to follow.
Angela's in the middle of a recording project right now with Glenn Zatola, wonderful saxophonist, trumpet player. She's gonna, she'll be having some an album coming out shortly with Glenn. We're going to be at Birdland. January 28th,
Sunday night,
28th, 5:30 show, one show, and
well, he's been writing like crazy, been busy writing. So we're doing all our promo stuff for the album, and you know what that's like. There's a period after you get the album out where you have to get it out, to radio stations.
Yeah, then it's the beginning. Yeah.
Right. So that takes a little work, and sometimes you just have to, buckle down and do it. So that's it. But we're hoping that it generates lots of wonderful work for us and the big band real soon. So
Call us, folks.
yeah.
We're ready.
Again, I'm going to pull it up here if I can find it. There we go. It is.
There it
Hey,
is.
I got it right this time.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Angela DeNiro with Ron Aprea and the Ron Aprea Big Band.
Yeah.
Guest artists Randy Brecker, Lew Tabackin, and Ken Peplowski. Ron and Angela, this has been marvelous, even a second time.
Yeah.
And keep us posted on your various activities and adventures, and wishing you all the best of luck, Ron, with your writing and arrangements and production activities, and Angela with your vocalizing and your voiceover activities. And we'll call our Facebook stream fini, but I want to stay on with the both of you to make sure that this is a take.
Hey.
And a couple of elements for our gag reel. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks a lot, Nick.
All right, don't go away. Don't go away.
Go away. Take care.
All right, we're ending the Facebook stream. Hopefully it is still there.
It's live right now.
Hang on.